world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy. You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk. It is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, episode number 631. Narrative Craft Engines. My name is Gonz, director of the Age of Deceit films. Wife calls me the Cabana Boy, your favorite Asian provocateur for Christ. Live to tape from California to bring you the best news, which is the gospel message of Jesus Christ, while reporting the egregious with a well-rounded, biblically grounded take on world events. And a quick update from Basil, the normal co-host who has missed, I don't know what it's up to now, eight episodes, something like that. He had his appendix removed because it burst, and he went into sepsis, and we've been praying for him. He's gone through it. He's been home for a couple weeks. He got the tube out on Monday, hallelujah, and he's recovering. And I think he's still in some pain from, an open wound, an open flesh wound. So he'll heal up there, buddy, and hop back on as soon as you can, but no rush. I want him to be ready to go. I don't want half Basil. I want full Basil. So we'll be continuing to pray for him. In the meantime here, let me just kick it off with a quick disclaimer. Disclaimer.
It's time for a disclaimer.
Now listen up, YouTube.
That's right. And just for all the content moderators and censorship managers out there, be they robots or humans, everything you hear on this show comes directly from the mainstream corporate news media. We do not claim to be experts on healthcare, geopolitics, military strategy, corporate law, or the moral and ethical implications of any of these topics, nor do we implicitly or explicitly support or subscribe to any sources or narratives containing misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security. We're good boys. All right, YouTube, we're good boys.
Oh, I forgot today's emergent phenomenon, which is targeted. Where is it? Targeted. Yes, in multiple ways. I believe there's some interesting headlines to consider as part of a targeted campaign against Christians, but we'll get there. Let me do a quick rundown.
Oh, look, here's Basil.
Let me bring you up to speed.
We're going to start off with a quick update about CEO of CNN, Chris Licht. We just had the update last episode, but another big update today. Well, to spoil it, he's out. And then Tucker Carlson debuts on Twitter. I have a couple thoughts from a short clip there. And then we'll do a flippy update. Robots can go Terminator after scientists create realistic self-healing skin. Yay. And we've covered this before, but it seems like there's a robot news cycle. We'll touch on that. And then, like I said, I think there's a interesting targeted effort against genuine Christians out there. I got a few stories, a collection of stories here to consider as part of the narrative crafting going on against believers, and how I think there is a media turf war as well between mainstream traditional media and the alt media, which has become its own establishment, so to speak. So yeah, I'll be touching on that and covering some of that from a philosophical point of view as well. And then an article about the CIA, because it's all connected to the CIA. Well, it's not all connected, but most of it is. And there's an article on mronline.org that covers the faults of the disastrous scientific legacy of the CIA. And then, of course, little mind control, little Deus, Ex Machina, AI, a couple AI updates, actually. And then the hubris of science with a gamma ray thing, and then a couple Nephilim update. A lot of Fox News today. I just realized that I think 4 or 5 stories is Fox News, which is interesting because, of course, our leading story, or part of it, has to do with Tucker Carlson, who just left Fox. But let's get on with the beginning here of the show, which is the first story of the day.
Chris Licht, president of CNN.
CNN.com, CNN chairman and CEO Chris Licht is out. He's out. He's done. Chris Licht, the embattled chief executive and chairman of CNN, whose brief one-year tenure at the network was stained by a series of severe missteps, will depart the company. Quote, I met with Chris and he will be leaving CNN. David Zaslav, the chief executive of parent company Warner Brothers Discovery, told CNN employees at the start of the network's daily editorial call Wednesday. So Monday, right, a couple days ago, we heard about Chris Licht apologizing to the CNN staff, and that came a couple days after the Atlantic article that was smearing, pretty much smearing Chris Licht and his whole slimy personality because he had Trump on CNN and he was trying to bridge the divide in the country and bring CNN back to some kind of integrity when it comes to journalism, but he failed miserably because he brought Trump back on or whatever. And so, the whole saga was sort of blowing up, and it is ending with Chris Licht leaving CNN here. Zaslav said Licht's job was, quote, never going to be easy, and praised the, quote, amazing career he has had, wishing him well on his future endeavors. So that would be interesting what he does in his future endeavors. Is he going to just go full on Trump MAGA? Is he going to ride that train and just be, he's the guy from CNN that got fired from CNN because he brought Trump on, and so he can jump on the Trump train and sort of be that the bridge to the mainstream audience, something like that. Who knows? But I'm not too worried about this guy, Chris Licht. Again, difficult job. It took a swing. He went for the home run, and he swung and missed apparently. So goodbye, Chris Licht.
Bye bye.
We start following these people. We make jingles and we make it a whole deal, and then they just leave. It's like, man. And then the jingles become obsolete, and we're stuck with these beautiful jingles that are no longer. Well, I guess they become timestamps of a certain time, an era, the year in which Chris Licht was CEO of CNN.
Chris Licht, president of CNN.
And as we cover mainstream media here, we are seeing the forking of the mainstream. We've been seeing the forking for a while, but the forking of mainstream media, many of its individual actors and reporters, journalists within, branching off and doing their own thing. It's been a trend for a few years. None marked more recently than Tucker Carlson.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. Evil people do evil things purely for the dark joy of being evil. Evil. Go eat each other. That's the Tucker Carlson program.
Yeah, I had to throw together a quick Tucker Carlson jingle, and it comes from his debut on Twitter, episode 1 of Tucker on Twitter. And it's about a 10-minute rant. He talked about Ukraine and Russia and the whole situation there. And it's interesting because he can be sort of non-military industrial complex now. So there's an appeal there where he had to sort of toe the line, maybe even go the opposite direction when he was under the Murdoch Fox banner. But now that he's independent, he can take that anti-war stance and go full in against the mainstream media and not be sitting there on mainstream media on Fox doing it. But there's a 2-minute segment here that I clipped off, and I think it's indicative of a lot going on in terms of the cultural buildup of the alt media and what it has done to truly divide the nation, at least the United States, in understanding what might be going on in the world. And I think it's very convenient that Tucker waited because the announcement about the Twitter thing was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and people have forgotten about it. People may be wondering, hey, what's going on with that? Tucker waits until the day after the whole whistleblower comes out, former intelligence agent, about the aliens and non-human crafts that the United States government has that's been kept secret, in a bombshell report. And Tucker is able to use it as fuel in his credibility building. And so there's the reason why I called the episode Narrative Craft Engines is because there is a large machine that helps facilitate narratives. And traditionally, the mainstream media has done that very well in the last 20 years. And I think they purposefully blew the whole thing up with COVID. I think it was meant to be the final straw that broke the camel's back when it comes to the old apparatus, because it was already becoming something else anyway, with this independent media, the internet, and platforms like Rumble siphoning off a certain segment of people looking to consume a certain type of information. And so Tucker riding that wave a little bit is very interesting to me. And so let me play this clip. I'll stop at points where I think I need to emphasize some stuff he says, because it speaks to this idea of Tucker Carlson becoming a spokesperson for alternative narratives about what's going on in the world, at least on Twitter, and the whole apparatus that we talked about in the last episode with Elon and Murdoch still sort of having his hand in it, which is interesting because Murdoch was Fox, right? But it's like they're branching off. It's a forking. It's a separation, but of the same. So anyway, here's Tucker on Twitter, episode 1.
What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue. Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that. What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified. How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on. Not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime. Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth.
Pause. Okay, so yes, I know this news hit and everybody was talking about it and it's a big deal. But for Tucker to come out and just explicitly state that it's true, that what this the former intelligence officer that comes out and has this, so we'll get to the the debrief, this weird media outlet that no one's ever heard of until the story, everyone started sharing it. It's, I don't know, there is some smoke when it comes to PSYOP. And I'm not saying Tucker's a bad guy or he's all in on it and he knows, and the cameras turn off and he puts on his dark cloak, and I don't think he's that guy. But it's sort of the natural progression of the exodus from an old legacy type of media, which will still sort of exist, but is dying, obviously. Financially, things are moving to a different place, and a lot of it has to do with the forking of mainstream media into alt media, which is, it was more general to say alternative media 10 years ago because it all existed on YouTube and Facebook and torrents and stuff like that, where there wasn't as much censorship. It was, and I remember even talking about it in the sense of, hey, we might be in the golden age of internet. Again, this is talking about 10 years ago, 2013, 2014, 2015. I remember having that conversation with Basil on Canary Cry Radio at some point where we said, hey, right now we can come out and just talk about these things, but there will come a time when stuff gets shut down, especially on these centralized platforms. And sure enough, within a few years, that's what we saw. So the alt media movement, this exodus, was forced upon for some of us, but also now that the bigger fish are moving, it's become kind of obvious that there is the same hand, so to speak, moving in that direction as well. But anyway, I just want to point out that Tucker Carlson is just buying that narrative, hook, line, and sinker, that, hey, he's just telling the truth. Maybe he's being sarcastic. I don't know. I can tell when he's being sarcastic about certain things because of his views, and sometimes he sarcastically presents the liberal Democrat progressive view on things. But in any case, okay, let me back it up a little bit and then continue on here.
Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't. The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened. On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup. There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word.
Okay, again, in his Tucker Carlson way, he presents this idea that it's just a statement of fact now, that there are these alien spaceships that are hovering over our cities. I'm just trying to point out the fork in the narrative as well, not just the media itself, but the alien narrative in terms of government and spaceships and technology and all this kind of stuff, because I do think it ultimately has to do with prepping society for the hyper technocracy, sci-fi world, woo-woo world, whatever, where you have a exponential advancement in computing, and therefore it just affects everything. And I do think that they're preparing the masses for that. But in any case, this forking, it's very interesting, because now the Tucker Carlson, Twitter, alt media people are the ones that can carry the weight when it comes to the narrative that, oh yeah, the U.S. government is hiding alien technology, quote unquote. And that anyone who questions that narrative suddenly becomes, oh, what are you, mainstream media? Or, hey, why aren't you buying this is, hey, it's Tucker Carlson. He's validating this idea, this intelligence guy, former intelligence officer. Yeah, we should just believe every former intelligence officer, right? So I'm trying to think critically about the situation and not buy into any narrative, one or the other, and just step back and look at how these alternative, especially Tucker, because he's so easy to see that he's the product of mainstream media, but he's, conservative. He's sort of the conservative champion, and now he's off on his own, and he's moving into Twitter, and he's already gotten millions. I think it was like 75 million views when I looked at it yesterday or this morning. So it's reaching millions of people, and it's catering to the audience that has risen in the last 8 years in a post-Trump 2016 election, and then the subsequent 2020 sort of MAGA martyrdom that started. Again, all part of the PSYOP in my opinion, but it caters to that audience, which again siphons off. And now their last sort of mainstream bastion was Fox, and now that Tucker's out of there, a lot of people follow Tucker, and now they're moving into Twitter. Everyone's downloading Twitter so they can watch Tucker Carlson. So I don't know. It's just an interesting time where the social media platforms are becoming the pillars that deliver alternative narratives to what's going on in our highest institutions. So let me finish off this clip here from Tucker. I'll back it up just a couple seconds.
Species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens. If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us.
Trust us. Yes, we know, Tucker. Especially here at Canary Cry, where just through the Face Like the Sun channel being knocked out after, what was it, 10 years? It was just a couple months shy of 10 years. And then the Canary Cry radio channel being knocked off about the same amount of time. I think it was actually less, 8 years. So anyway, yeah, we know that this happens. So it's no surprise there. But again, he speaks some truth there. I mean, it is true that the reason why nobody knows what's going on is because there's so much lying, there's so much propaganda, and it's also, I think, obvious that a counter revolution was going to happen. A counter culture was going to rise. Anytime you put pressure on the culture in one direction or another, you're stoking people to step up into a counter revolution. So I see the whole thing as part of the social engineering apparatus. But it is interesting to sort of drive home that point. Fox News, this published this morning, Pentagon denies secret UFO retrieval program after whistleblower bombshell. So now, the reports are the Pentagon itself is denying it, which it's funny because now that the alt narrative is out, that there are these things going on in the secret government, the highly advanced technology and reverse engineering it, and there's an arms race to reverse engineer the tech and all this kind of stuff, and maybe bodies have been recovered. By the way, pretty much the same type of arguments as the counter argument with Roswell. But anyway, they're just kind of repeating the same sort of thing. Let's see. The Pentagon undermined a whistleblower's claim about a secret government program that he said has been recovering crashed UFOs and reverse engineering their technology. David Charles Grush, a decorated Air Force veteran, told News Nation that they're, quote, retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed. Quote, well, naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots, and believe it or not, as fantastical as it sounds, it's true, Grush said. Susan Goff, a spokesperson for the Department of Defense, told Fox News Digital in an email on Tuesday that there is no, quote, verifiable information to substantiate the claims. So I just want to contrast this here. You have the whistleblower, David Charles Grush, which spelled Grusch. I believe it's Germanic in origin, as far as I understand, and it means to crush, grind, or crumble down. So you have Grush, and then from the Department of Defense side, you have Goff, Gough, Goff, which is a nickname, according to Wikipedia here, a nickname to someone with red hair or a red complexion, which I thought was interesting. I mean, the only reference there I can think of is the reports of, for example, the Kandahar giant, when the U.S. Special Forces met or allegedly killed that giant in the Middle East. It had red hair. So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything connected there, but I don't know. Just something to point out. You got your two narrative sides there. You got your leaker, whistleblower, Grush. Then you have your Department of Defense, Goff, and they're sparring. Goff is the mouthpiece for the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, a section of the DoD tasked with investigating and identifying unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, a government-created phrase used instead of UFOs. Quote, to date, AARO has not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently, Goff said. So again, by denying it, it doesn't even matter because the counter narrative is out there. By denying it, they it it validates the argument that they're hiding it, because of course they're going to deny it if they're hiding it, right? And then you have a big enough audience on the other side validating it with, I guess, the alternative media crowd basically saying like, yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's true or not. It probably is true that there's advanced technology that our government is hiding. I've been in that camp for a long time. And I've even been in the camp of a lot of the technology likely existed in some form prior to the flood in the antediluvian world. And it was probably some kind of advanced magnetic technology, some kind of computing technology, communications network. L.A. Marzulli talks about how there was some kind of ancient internet in the past, in the antediluvian world, and the megalithic structures have something to do with it. So all things that are plausible, not that we know for sure, but it seems like there's something along those lines. So of course the U.S. government would have their fingers on some of that technology, or at least try to reverse engineer it or build it or find it or whatever it may be. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight and put a cherry on top of this idea that there is a narrative craft engine which is somewhat up for grabs right now. And clearly Elon Musk, Tucker, a segment, and, a bunch of not nameless, but, journalists and people on Twitter, for example, that I can't name, that are independent, that are just being reporters on certain issues, or have their own media platforms. I guess we fall into that category in a sense, because I'm just a guy, I'm just a Christian guy on the internet, doing a show. And we've been doing it for a while, but it's not like we're out there trying to peddle this humongous audience and all this kind of stuff. We're just doing what we've been doing for 10 plus years when it comes to analyzing the world through a biblical lens and talking about it, and trying to find a place for people that don't get that in their churches. So in any case, I think let's move on. We're going to just continue on with the show here. I do have a hard out today, but it's important to identify these narratives, because I think there is a specific targeted group, which we will get into. It's a pretty serious topic there. We'll get into it as the show goes along. But before, let's remind everybody that it is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes. Wednesday.
Hey guys, know what day it is? It's Wednesday. It's time for the Canary Cry News Talk. Yeehaw!
Wednesday, my dudes. It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Yep, it's Wednesday. And I see Chili Peen in the chat there mention Flash, the CW version of the show Flash. And interestingly enough, I just happened to be watching that. I think I'm like 7 or 8 episodes in. And yeah, it starts off and, those guys using a particle accelerator in somewhere in America, and it's bigger than CERN. It's more powerful than CERN. And of course it blows up, and whole thing seems like it was plotted by the guy who seems to be the guy. But anyway, the Flash guy gets hit by lightning. He got the Satan fall like lightning. He gets these powers, and then he's the Flash. He's able to run fast and stuff. So, and of course, there's all kinds of references to all sorts of things that are relevant to our show, which is an interesting thing. I'm hoping that our show is able to supplement the media consumption of, I guess, worldly media consumption that's out there, that I know people indulge in, and you're not guilty if you do or anything like that, but it's just hard to turn off that sort of analysis goggles. At least for me it is. I can't really do anything. The closest I come is NBA basketball, where I kind of forget that for a few moments. I can forget that like this whole operation is sponsored by communist lizard people, but it's hard to take off the lens of like, yeah, this whole thing is all just one big operation when you're, seeing worldly things, worldly media. So that's why, doing this, at least for me, is very therapeutic. I don't know about everybody else, but hopefully we can sort of decompress over the world news together and stay grounded in the word. So I'm looking forward to Basil coming back. We'll get there. I think he said he was feeling more pain today than yesterday. So again, he's recovering from the flesh wound. And so just keep praying for him. I think he'll be okay, but just give him a few days to get back on his feet. And in the meantime here, let's go ahead and thank some executive producers.
Executive producers.
We operate on the value for value system here, which means we don't have any advertisements. We don't have any corporate influence, no communist influence, no cartel influence. As far as we know, I mean, we don't know where people are getting their treasure from, but as far as we know, we don't communicate with any of those groups with any kind of deals. We're just the canary in the coal mine here to share the way, the truth, and the life. And so our content is free, and if you get any value out of it, you simply consider providing value back, and you get to choose and you get to determine that value, whether it comes in the form of volunteering your time, whether it's in the form of contributing with your talent. Maybe you're good at art or music or jingles or ISOs or something like that. You can put something together, or of course pitching in with your treasure. And we appreciate that because we understand that it's a tough situation right now. The inflation thing is nuts. The debt ceiling just disappeared. The debt firmament has been suspended. There's no debt firmament for like 2 years. So we'll see what happens there. But we appreciate those who jump in with a little bit extra, and those are the executive producers, people coming in with $100 or more per episode, and we like to thank them here. If I am not mistaken, as of right now, we do not have anybody who is an executive producer for the show on this episode. I'm just waiting for this to refresh real quick to verify that claim. And yes, it is true. We do not have an executive producer for episode 631, but that's okay. There's still time. You can still come in, and we'll actually, to be honest, we will probably thank you in the next episode, which might be Monday, because I think we're going to try to do a Canary Cry radio episode this upcoming Friday. And it might be helpful because we're going to talk about Christian nationalism a little bit today, and it's sort of a parallel thing, and I might bring up some of these same points, but in a more CCR format, or at least a shorter CCR / Face Like the Sun format, to address some of the things I've been putting together for Christian nationalism. So, look out for that, I guess. But there you go. No executive producers, but there are some producers to thank, and I'd like to do that now, starting off with Jeremy F. Jeremy F. comes in $77.77. Thank you very much. Very generous. I did not see a note. We'll double check once again, though, make sure there was no note. But yeah, coming in just now, very, very recently. So we appreciate that there, Jeremy. And who else? Let's see. Yeah, it's a really low day today, but it's okay. We're a little bit early today going live as well, so that might have something to do with it. Okay. Let's see. I know we have people under 777 here. Dame Gale, Canary Whisperer, Lady of X's and O's, 269 episodes in a row. We have Morgan E coming in. Thank you, Morgan E. That is a 37 episode streak for Morgan E. And let's see. Veronica D. Is she in there? She is. Veronica D. Thank you very much, Veronica D. 269 episodes in a row. And we also have Sir Morv, Knight of the Burning Chariots, coming in as well. Sir Morv came in. Where's Morv? Under 777. So, yeah, apologize. A little all over the place right now. I believe it's 237 or 238 for Morv. You gotta fix me on that, Morph. And then, I'm pretty sure that we will see producerships from Sir Casey the Shield Knight, who will be on a 307 episode streak, as well as Sir Scott Knight of Truth, who will be on a 292 episode streak. And hopefully, again, if anything is missed, please just email us and we'll set it right. Especially when Basil gets back, he'll set things straight. Otherwise, it's just a zoo over here when I'm in charge of this stuff. So there you go. Thank you very much to all the producers, especially those coming in with their treasure in the form of the supply drop, as well as the T-shirt council. I know we don't always thank you individually per episode, but you guys are really keeping the lights on here, and we really appreciate it. For those of you wondering, if you go to canarycrysupply.com, you can support the podcast for a monthly subscription, $33.33 to stick it to those Freemasons. And as a thank you from us, you will receive a drop shipment every quarter that contains all kinds of Canary Cry branded stuff made in America, as well as for the next 3 quarters, Age of Deceit 1, Age of Deceit 2, and Age of Deceit 3 in succeeding quarters. DVD copies, hard copies, so that you can have it in your bunker storage when the cyber pandemic happens and you need to share information. So, canarycrysupply.com, and then canarycrytshirtcouncil.com. It's a similar thing. You can support the podcast for $19.84 to stick it to George Orwell, I guess. And what we do is we vote. And when you jump on, you become part of the T-shirt council. You get to vote on the T-shirt design that is sent out to you every quarter. So those are a couple ways to support the show on a more consistent subscription style basis. And we are very thankful for those people. I think a majority of the people hopped on, and it's sometimes it feels like the individual show producers is low, but really it's being held up by these monthly supporters who come in on the supply drop and the T-shirt council. So thank you very much to everyone who is already on, and if you are not on, consider it. So it's a more of a set it and forget it thing, and you get a little shipment every quarter of cool Canary Cry branded stuff. So there you go, and thank you for your patronage.
Shut up and take my money.
Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage.
All right, let's jump into Flippy.
Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
Okay, Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about Flippy as a way to explore the fun and exciting ways robots are taking over the world and how there's nothing we can do about it. Today, of course, it's Fox because, I don't know, Fox has somehow taken over today's newsfeed. But Fox, robots could go full Terminator after scientists create realistic self-healing skin. Now, I had to double check the date on this because I am almost certain that we covered this story maybe a year ago, something like that. It was sometime within the last 2 years we covered this story. Maybe it was the announcement of getting funded or something like that, and now they're deploying it. But I remember this guy's name, Zenan Bao. Stanford. Always Stanford. All these guys, all these scientific cardinals coming out of Stanford. Robots can soon be cloaked in human-like synthetic skin similar to the cyborg assassin of the Terminator movie franchise. We'll see more from the Terminator in a moment, which is kind of weird, but I know we'll see him. The guy, that guy. After Stanford University researchers developed an ultra-realistic self-healing material. Researchers have been studying the developing convincing skin materials for robots for years, with Stanford professor Zenan Bao touting the first multi-layer self-healing synthetic electric skin back in 2012. Oh, maybe it was 2012. More than a decade later, Bao and fellow researchers have taken their studies even further into the future. Layers of synthetic skin that can now self-recognize and align with each other when injured, simultaneously allowing the skin to continue functioning while healing. Quote, while achieving what we believe to be the first demonstration of a multi-layer thin film sensor that automatically realigns during healing, Christopher Cooper, Stanford PhD student and co-author of the study, told SWNS. Quote, this is a critical step toward mimicking human skin, which has multiple layers that all reassemble correctly during the healing process. Armoring an artificial intelligence-powered robot with lifelike skin could be the way of the future, making humans feel more comfortable around such technology, according to SWNS. The material is similar to actor Arnold Schwarzenegger's cyborg character in Terminator, which boasted a robotic endoskeleton covered by living tissue. Okay, great. Wonderful. Quote, I thought this was interesting. Combining with magnetic field guided navigation and inducing heating, we may be able to build reconfigurable soft robots that can change shape and sense their deformation on demand. Co-author Renee Zhao said. So this is moving a lot towards black goo, sentient molecules, sentient matter, where you kind of have this blob. It's able to take any form. They showed it in theory in movies, kid movies like Big Hero 6, where you have your little nano robots. They weren't really nano. They were just little tiny robots that collectively work together to form different shapes and different things. So it's similar to that. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. They're just kind of doing it, huh? Just continue to do it. It's this weird spiritual mission for man to create synthetic everything. And I wonder what spirit is really influencing that whole thing. The whole, I don't know, push to create synthetic skin, synthetic bones, synthetic brains, and ultimately connect to all of it. Because part of the thing they don't mention here is, of course, eventually we're going to be able to use this on regular people, right? We already have plastic surgery, might as well, and skin grafting. It's just the next step. Oh, you have natural skin? Ew, gross. Where's your, what's this brand, the company called? Ultra realistic self-healing material, synthetic skin. I don't know. Let's just say synthetic skin, I guess. I'd be like, ew, natural skin. Go get some synthetic skin. So much prettier. So anyway, there you go. There's your Flippy update. There's a couple more AI stories that I think could fall under Flippy that we'll get to later because it has to do with our spouses, and it's a little creepy, but not surprising especially if you're a long-time listener of the show. So let's move on here so we can get into some of the bigger topics here, and that includes Christian nationalism.
So you see, I also call myself a Christian nationalist, and that's not a bad word.
Wash your mouth out with soap.
Your dirty mouth needs a bath. PSYOPs.
It's a PSYOP. Okay, so I've put together a collection of articles here that drives home a point. But to start, or before we get into that list of articles, I wanted to show also a series of articles that highlights, I guess, I don't know. There's just something I noticed in the news because, what we're doing with Canary News Talk, what we're trying to do anyway, is to keep a pulse on all the kind of news coming out. And you can, after a while, it's hard to keep up with every single article, obviously, but you can see themes that come and go. They kind of wash up and are in your face, and then they wash away, and then they come back again later, or they're brought back up on some kind of news cycle. And I noticed an uptick on fire and churches in the last week. So just to kick things off, this is 7 News Boston. This is from Massachusetts, published June 5th. Officials determined Spencer Church fire was caused by lightning strike. And let me just play the clip.
Church fire in Spencer last week. Investigators now confirming the fire was caused by a lightning strike on Friday. That steeple just collapsing as the flames destroyed the church. Officials say it took more than 80 firefighters from nearly 20 departments to get that fire out. Church fire.
Now the footage is pretty intense. You see the tower of the church just engulfed in flames and then tip over, which anytime I see churches burn and you know, especially sort of these older churches that have that narrow top and they fall over, it reminds me of I Pet Goat, because there's a scene at the end of I Pet Goat 2 where this alleged New Age Jesus character comes out of the system and is out in sort of an ocean thing. His feet are on fire. He's on this little boat and he's exited this ice castle, which probably has something to do with Antarctica or whatever. And he's seen the sun and everything. In the background is this ice castle. One of the pillars of the castle is a cross and the whole thing crumbles. And you can see, for those of you watching, the ice tower church building thing crumble as the Jesus character, who has fire in his eyes and a pyramid in the third eye on his forehead, move away from this structure. And yeah, you see the whole thing crumble. And so it's just kind of interesting. It's an interesting thing. Now, was that weird? Yeah. But that's not all. Eyewitness News, ABC 13, published June 5th. Second electrical fire reported at Co-Cathedral of the Sacred Heart just 3 days after initial incident. Interesting, because the Jesus character here in I Pet Goat 2 has that Sacred Heart imagery on his chest, I believe. It's like that burning heart imagery. I'm trying to get it to show here on the video, but I am failing. But okay. Anyway, it's true. He's got that heart there. Now, listen to this. This is from Houston, Texas. A second small fire was reported at the Co-Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in downtown Houston on Monday. The first fire, which occurred on the first Friday of the month, was said to have started on the second floor toward the rear of the church in an electrical room. It was a day Catholics typically went to the cathedral for Mass and confession, but those were canceled due to the fire. A maintenance worker at the Co-Cathedral said they were patching holes on the roof Friday afternoon because firefighters cut them so smoke could exit the building. Okay, so Friday there was this fire in the electrical room. I mean, doesn't it sound like a sci-fi scene where some entity opened a portal and just appeared using the electrical room in the church, and they have to play it off? So it's like, there's a fire. And then 3 days later, there's another fire and another electrical one, but it was minor. So it's like, yeah, now he's got to leave. Whatever the entity was has to leave through the same portal to return. So, yeah, there you go. A couple churches on fire, electricity, lightning. Interesting. But that's not all. There's one more here. NPR, published June 5th. A 97-year-old Los Angeles church catches on fire for the second time in 2 years. Now, this is St. John's United Methodist Church. And yes, for the second time in 2 years. The last time it was February 2022. At the time of Saturday's fire, the church had still been holding services in the parking lot while renovating the building after the first fire. So they were still renovating after the first fire a couple years ago, and it gets set on fire again. A 97-year-old church in LA. So it's just something I noticed, but 3 stories of church fires. Old churches on fire in this country. In the United States of America. One in Houston, Texas. One in Boston, Massachusetts. One in Los Angeles. Very interesting. Now, I'm sure people remember, speaking of California, You remember the old governor?
Screw your freedom.
Yes, the Terminator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger. New York Post, Arnold Schwarzenegger says, heaven is a fantasy. Anyone that tells you something else is a effing liar. Well, I'm sorry, Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of California. I say you are the liar. I was supposed to have liar jingle right here. What happened to my liar jingle? Liar. Liar. It's not playing. It's not working. Oh, man. All right. Well, you know, this one. Liar! There we go. Yeah. Okay. It says here, Arnold Schwarzenegger thinks the idea of heaven is just a fantasy. The Terminator star, 75 years old, spoke about his thoughts on what happens after death after actor Danny DeVito, 78, posed the question, what's in the future for us? Quote, it reminds me of Howard Stern's question to me. Tell me, Governor, what happens to us when we die? I said, nothing. You're 6 feet under. Anyone that tells you something else is a effing liar, Schwarzenegger said in a conversation for Interview magazine. I said, we don't know what happens with the soul and all the spiritual stuff that I'm not expert in, but I know that body we see each other now, we will never see each other like that again. The Predator star admitted that speaking about death makes him uncomfortable. Okay, so there you go. You have this sort of backhanded insult towards anybody who thinks there's an afterlife or a heaven. How dare people believe in heaven, Arnold Schwarzenegger? They're effing liars all of a sudden? How rude. I mean, okay. But again, how much do we believe you? The guy who said this.
Screw your freedom.
During the pandemic. Come on, guy. Come on. You might be strong, but yeah. So yeah, the idea here, the Terminator is coming after Christians. That is the takeaway. And they have the skin for the Terminator now, right? It's all coming together. Do you guys see the whole picture now? It's all working towards a pretty disturbing dystopia. The DailyWire.com, again, alternative platform, an important pillar of alt media. I mean, practically mainstream at this point. The headline here, and this is in line with a couple stories. Headline, Satan respects pronouns. Designer says Target set dangerous precedent removing his products. So the controversial designer who had his merchandise removed from Target following public backlash and boycotts spoke out on the incident, criticizing the retailer for its response. Target had initially partnered with Eric Carnell of the UK-based brand Abprallen to create items for its 2023 Pride collection. Carnell found himself at the center of a firestorm after critics of Target discovered the Abprallen Etsy shop, which offered merchandise featuring occult images and phrases such as Satan respects pronouns and trans witches for abortion. People were also upset that Target was selling tuck-friendly swimwear. Is that Tucker Carlson-friendly swimwear? In stores. The retailer responded to the backlash by moving displays to the back of some instances and removing certain controversial items, including Carnell's designs. Quote, it's a very dangerous precedent to set that if people just get riled up enough about the products that you're selling, you can completely distance yourself from the LGBT community when and if it's convenient, Carnell told Reuters. So listen to that. So this is a sly move that I've been talking about. How the trans culture, the people that are trans or LGBTQ, the people that have been said are being marginalized for the last 20 years, when they haven't been really, right? It's pretty clear that they have the loudest voice. So how are you marginalized if you have the largest voice in culture? But they've been touted as the ones with, you know, the oppression and all this kind of stuff. Well, now we're seeing them, the people that identify in that way, actually go back to becoming truly, not truly, but at least in terms of culturally oppressed. I'm going to be very careful, not actual oppression, cultural oppression. When Target goes, oh, you know what? There's more people that are mad about this. We're going to actually move against the LGBT thing and we're losing money and all this kind of stuff. The fact that they made that move means the minority view is the LGBTQ trans view, this radical view that they're pushing on kids and all this kind of stuff. So it makes sense that, that this is all kind of unfolding in the way it is. But yeah, it causes them to become actually marginalized in some sense, which again, I don't think it's true marginalization, but it's a pushback. And it's just interesting to see because I think it is supposed to, in the same way that an alt media movement rose out of the pressures being placed on mainstream culture. Now that the alt culture is becoming mainstream, you're going to see the flippening of that, where all these trans lefty progressive views become underground again. It'll go through a whole cycle. It's cyclical. And then it'll come back up the next time it comes back. Man, it's probably going to be pretty wild and satanic and weird and transhuman and cyborg and all that kind of stuff, because each iteration, it seems to just get more and more crazy, more and more radical. And that's the same thing with the conservative side too. This wave is pretty techno-conservative. They're Tucker Carlson, Elon, they're all tech oligarchs driving this conservative alt media movement. So anyway, back to the thing here. Let's see. Well, there's not much else with this story. I have the quote, Satan loves you and respects who you are. You're important and valuable in this world, and you deserve to treat yourself with love and respect. LGBT plus people are so often referred to as being a product of Satan or going against God's will. So fine, we'll hang with Satan instead. End quote. Again, it's this open, hey, we're Satan over here. We're God's people over here. It seems like the teams are being deployed. It's picking the teams on the vertical map instead of the right-left map. So anyway, thought it was interesting. And to continue on this point, that the Christians are being targeted here. This is Futurism.com. And this is also a story that pertains to AI.
Artificial intelligence.
The headline, and I apologize, this is in the headline, this is part of the article. Idiots fooled by AI-generated pics of satanic merchandise at Target. Okay, so we just talked about this Target thing. Now we have this interesting story that I'll read here. Far-right Facebook was sent spiraling last week over so-called images of children wearing what looked to be Target merchandise covered in satanic imagery. These people, however, are idiots. And all of the images in question, which also included depictions of satanic horned mannequins, because that's also something that a major retailer would definitely put in suburban shopping centers, were AI-generated fakes. Quote, look at the faces of these children. I feel it in my spirit. They even knew there was something satanic with making them be photographed with these clothes on. Reads one such post shared on May 30th by the administrators of a Facebook group called Christian Patriots. Quote, if you're a Christian and a parent and you shop at Target, Lord have mercy on you. Quote, is this for real? Asked one skeptical commentator. Quote, unfortunately, it is, the page's admin responded. But again, unfortunately, for these good old Christian patriots, it isn't for real. The images were AI generated by a Facebook user named Dan Reese, who first posted the phony pictures to a Facebook group called AI Art Universe, and separately confirmed to Reuters that the images in question were created using the text-to-image AI system Midjourney. The images of Satan-worshipping tykes, one of whom was depicted with tattoos, by the way, may not have been real, but watching people lose their minds over these fake images as if they were real is clearly a new layer of AI-driven internet hell. Oh, so horrible. And they show the images here, and I can easily see how a group like Christian Patriots, or I actually don't know that group specifically, but it sounds like a group that is right in that niche of hey, I'm a Christian. You can even call yourself a truther. A lot of them are Trump supporters, but a lot of them identify as Christian, and they identify as nationalist because they defend the Constitution and all that stuff, right? So there's a sort of constitutional Christian. And those folks, they can be so easily deceived by something like this, and clearly it is. And, you know, it's, I don't know. It's tough because I know these people mean well, but you got to just be careful these days. A spokesperson from Target also confirmed to Reuters that the retailer, quote, has never sold the products depicted in the images because, of course, they haven't, since they don't actually exist. And for its part, Facebook has thankfully marked the images as phony, but not before other Facebookers sank their teeth into the conspiracy. Target has really gone over the edge, reads one May 28th post decrying the fake merchandise, and they just kind of quote a bunch of people, commenting on this. So to me, it's so easy if you're part of the establishment and you're part of the sort of Mockingbird 2023 version trying to stoke misinformation or discredit a group. You give them what they want. Something like this with the satanic imagery in what looks like Target clothing and, on display and everything else. Exactly what they would expect from, what's being a cultural issue right now with Target and the whole trans LGBTQ issue, because ultimately that LGBTQ issue, I think it was always meant to harvest. I use that word specifically, Christians and non-Christians. I think it was supposed to be that divide and conquer thing because it's not an acceptable lifestyle for Christians. And so once you make it an issue, you put it in their face, and you even accuse people of not being American or, loving or not biblical, even not godly. If you don't accept these other views, it becomes a divisive issue. And so it's a very useful tactic in that regard. Okay, now moving on. We're still on the same overall general path here. This is from the LancasterPatriot.com. I did see other outlets verify the story, and you can see the video. The video exists, but the headline here, reading man arrested for quoting Bible in public. And it says here, it took less than 60 seconds of standing on a sidewalk for Damon Atkins to be placed in handcuffs and arrested for quoting a portion of a Bible verse. On Saturday morning, dozens of people were gathered outside the Reading City Hall on Washington Street to participate in the city's first ever Pride March and Rally, endorsed by Mayor Eddie Moran. At approximately 10:05 a.m., Atkins arrived at a public sidewalk across the street from City Hall. And so the video exists here. I mean, it's not, the audio's not great, but you see basically a couple things take place. The person filming says that they were kind of harassed, but then it shows somebody, again, a crowd of people over by City Hall. They got the rainbow flags. They're all there. And then on the other side of the street, a couple guys holding signs and a cop talking to one of the guys who's holding a sign. This is, I believe, Damon Atkins. And, they make points about having free speech and being able to speak and, all this kind of stuff. And I believe this is the part that I think we could use some audio. Let me see if I can get a little bit of audio here to figure out what's happening.
People that are in hell. So you do you, and I'm going to do me. This is public property. You. God is not. That's it. God, this will be public.
Okay, so he says something. Says something about God.
Yo, I'm going to need you to go to.
Okay, so he said something. What did he say? I think the article actually says, now in this country, God is a derogatory term. That's what he said. Now in this country, God is a derogatory term. As he's saying that, the cop turns around, walks up to him, and handcuffs him. And on the other side of the street, the cheering you heard, that was from the rally of, small group of people that are cheering on this guy getting arrested for standing on the other side protesting. I mean, I think if you're part of the LGBTQ community, having protesters at your events, like especially religious protesters, should be like of course. And for this guy to be handcuffed in front of everybody is very much a spectacle. And again, it's very interesting. I put on my critical thinking cap and I look at stuff like this, and it does tug at my emotions. It's like, man, look at where we are in this country. It is nothing near what I grew up in, and I didn't even grow up in the church. I grew up as just an American, a secular American kid, second generation. My parents came from Japan. I was born here, and I was shown a lot of the American mythology growing up, and there were Christian elements to it throughout. And perhaps those were seeds in my own walk as I eventually came around to the biblical worldview and got saved and baptized, and whole change of life. That was 2007 when that took place. But it's now we're in this place, 2023. You say something about God at a pride rally and you get handcuffed. One part of me says, wow, we've really fallen, which is true. We have. The other part of me says, this is meant to stoke us, people like me, people like you listening, watching, probably Christians, probably American. You don't have to be American. We have international viewers and listeners, but a majority are American. So, American, Christian, you identify as somebody who seeks truth. And just for that, you are marginalized. You're targeted. And that's kind of where we're at. But it's also very interesting because that it kind of goes away for a while. It seems like it's always there. It's always been there, but it goes away and then it comes back in waves. And now it seems like a true radicalization taking place when it comes to that divide and conquer tactic and creating those two sides. And the whole thing, I believe, is a giant psyop. And I say that with some evidence to back. And as part of the evidence, I know I've referenced it multiple times. I recommend anybody who hasn't picked up Volume 1 of Two Masters and Two Gospels by Dr. Mike Bennett, Dr. Future. I haven't tuned into his new radio show, but I know he's back on radio in Tennessee, I want to say, Nashville. I could be wrong on that, but somewhere local, he's doing radio again. But in his book, there's a couple sections here that I think are very important in the Christian nationalism conversation and the sort of, because we understand it's very obvious that they're targeting Christians culturally. They're trying to make Christians look dumb and violent and radical and irrational, and, all these things. And at the same time, there is an element of a self-fulfilling prophecy where, because the media paints Christian nationalism as this anti-establishment thing, people latch onto it and say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian nationalist, and write books. And they're sort of using that title to push their ideas that perhaps at its core, when you distill it down to what they actually mean by Christian nationalism, it's a pretty harmless thing. But because you're taking the bait placed by the social engineers and the mainstream apparatus, you're buying into it. You're sort of buying into that war. And so, in any case, let me read this. So, as people may know, "In God We Trust" is the national motto. That wasn't a thing until 1956. When the House report says it was part of psychological value to have "In God We Trust" as part of the national motto. So I'm going to quote the book starting at page 171 here in this book, Two Masters and Two Gospels. So here we go. They then decided to make a push. This is after the national motto became "In God We Trust." They then decided to make a push within the military to produce, quote, religiously grounded soldiers to counter the, quote, messianic nature of communism. Truman had decided to enact a 1-year mandatory universal military training, UMT program, for all high school graduates in 1947 as an ideal laboratory to force these new beliefs onto, quote, captive recruits with 1 million or more bandled together or bandled annually. He began a pilot program connected to this in 1947 at Fort Knox, Kentucky, where, quote, military leaders could engineer a generation of patriotic, virtuous, cold warriors, end quote, a mujahideen, a holy warrior for their purposes. This special project was assigned to Brigade General John Devine, who fought under Patton, to, quote, morally and spiritually engineer the U.S. Army and to, quote, create a perfect soldier who can ground lethal capability in a religious framework. It became known as, quote, Father Divine's Heaven. Okay, I hope people are following here, that there's a psychological operation, a government agenda to basically radicalize a generation into becoming warriors, religious warriors for the state to defend against communism. The protocols for these teenagers under the age of 18 were for them to first be profiled religiously and then led to a taxpayer-funded religion conversion decision while in the program, along with hours of personal time with a chaplain and weekly mandatory religious services. They were also adopted by local congregations while attending mandatory religious classes and lectures during the week and being told how our nation was founded on religious principles. Chaplains were asked to be moral police and forbade alcohol and recruited local bartenders to be informants. They also forbade pinup pictures, yet would not tolerate prissiness. As a result, over 90% of recruits went to church, leading Truman's advisory commission to recommend mandatory training nationwide, turning America into a Spartan-like warrior state, with the idea supported by 80% of the public. However, teachers and professors, labor unions, this is interesting right here, and this is very important. However, so this is all happening in the 1940s and 50s, where 80% of the country is saying this is a good thing. These young, mostly men, but these young kids are learning about the foundation of our country, founded on biblical principles, and they are willing to die to defend our nation. Whole generation, indoctrinated into the mythology. But there was pushback. However, teachers and professors, labor unions, and many religious leaders opposed it, leading to a petition of 652 religious leaders who called it an, quote, un-American form of indoctrination. They were aware of it back then. An un-American form of indoctrination happening to 80% of the country under the guise of church and country. The Republicans opposed the hefty price tag, conceding that the Army would take these teens and, quote, make them soldiers for the rest of their lives, subjecting, quote, American youth to the complete domination of the government during their most formative period, end quote. Regardless, General Devine had been training generals and other high-level officers in the same Knox method regimen, which continued on as the officer students then later trained their troops. The Knox program became character guidance, in quotes, in basic training, which included 6-hour-long lectures on the 10 Commandments, the sanctity of marriage, the relationship of democracy and religion, and the dangerous faith of communism, with soldiers having to attend such lectures monthly afterwards. Chaplains then began policing all literature, removed questionable materials from base libraries, and confiscated obscene materials. Regarding the use of psychological warfare on civilians by the government with the use of religion, in 1951, Truman set up the Psychological Strategy Board, PSB, comprising the CIA, Department of State and Defense, and others, and studied, quote, the potential role of religion in psychological warfare, end quote. Their first report stated that, quote, the potentialities of religion as an instrument for combating communism are universally tremendous. Religion is an established force with calls forth men's strong emotions. Our overall objective in seeking the use of religion as a Cold War instrumentality should be the furtherance of world spiritual health, end quote. Herzog, which is the guy that wrote about this book, The Spiritual Industrial Complex, which is being quoted, Herzog adds that, quote, the PSB was influenced by the earlier United States Information and Education Exchange, an overt psychological program authorized by Congress in 1948 to cultivate a favorable image of the U.S. worldwide, which had established a 3-person council of religious leaders to investigate the, quote, moral and religious factors of psychological warfare. Their report recommended that public leaders emphasize the historic and continuing influence of religion on American society, the spiritual roots of U.S. institutions, and the religious component of major holidays. All right. And it goes on. It talks about Eisenhower and his work at J. Edgar Hoover, and really the apparatus spreads from there. But I hope it sheds light a little bit on how it relates to the modern radicalization of this idea, because the military now is on the trans train, the trans-human thing. They're all bought in. The intelligence agencies, the CIA, are the facilitators of that whole woke agenda and the trans and all that kind of stuff. And they're in the military. And it's becoming ubiquitous out there. But it's also creating the counter movement. So it's a little bit complex, and maybe you need to map it out on your own. But if you look at, back in the day, you had the same radicalization that was taking place, but it was through the church. And I guess in that way, it's the same thing. Fight communism, fight left liberalism, fight Democrats, all the same thing. Same sort of threat. The threat profile is the same to mobilize and radicalize a generation. But at the same time, it's not state-controlled military stuff that they want. They want the counter-revolution. They want this uprising of the Christian nationalist, a violent uprising, which will be labeled fascist in history, right? Because they already have labeled it fascist. You see people, leftists on Twitter, that are like, you can post something about Trump and they'll be like, "Duh, look at this fascist trying to fascize the world." It's just out of control. This is crazy manipulation of phrases. But okay, so there you go. That's the whole Christian nationalism thing in a nutshell. So we went through churches on fire, getting hit by lightning, and then targeting Christian beliefs, making fun of Christians because they were fooled by AI, arresting Christians for speaking the word of God at these rallies. And, there's one more. Speaking of lizard people, the New York Times headline, scientists discover a virgin birth in a crocodile. The act of reptile reproduction suggests that dinosaurs and, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher this, pterosaurs may have been capable of parthenogenesis too, much like the creatures in Jurassic Park. So, yeah, there you go. Looks like crocodiles can have virgin births, and there you go. You got your crocodile messiah, born of a virgin, your Antichrist. Maybe it's a hybrid baby, a hybrid crocodile. I could picture Joe Biden merging with the crocodile, being reborn, turning into the Antichrist. But anyway, there you go. There's the ridiculous wrap up there. All right, let's move on here.
We don't do that now, though. We don't mess around other people's elections, Joe.
Actually, before we move on, I forgot one story. I keep doing this. But it's okay, because I want to end actually the Christian nationalism thing in a little bit of a positive up note. Because we have the Crocodile version, birth, we got, Christians being fooled. I think there is a genuine aspect to this, and then there is the hijacked, co-opted PSYOP part of this. There can be both. And this is from the Christian Post, and the headline: over 4,000 people baptized at California Beach during historic Baptize SoCal event. There's a photo here, bunch of people coming out. More than 4,000 people were baptized off the beaches of Southern California at Pentecost Sunday as part of a revival event organized by several congregations. On May 28th, around 300 churches came to Pirate Cove Beach under the banner of the event Baptize SoCal, with a recorded number of 4,166 people getting baptized. And, man, that I don't know. It kind of makes me emotional, because it's like, yeah, there is a movement happening. As you can clearly tell, we had that revival, the church revival thing. Who knows how genuine it was? A few weeks ago, they had that long, ongoing service. So there's these pockets of what appear to look like revival taking place as part of the cultural pressure, the mainstream pressures. And so, as I said, the idea that we're going to be able to tell the difference between the weeds, or no, not the weeds, the wheat and the tares. The difference, that they look the same for a while, but then you can tell. The Lord can tell. I think we're starting to see some clear lines being drawn in the sand, and it's going to affect how everything happens with this country, and especially, obviously the end times events and stuff. And I think everything's leading to that in general. But in the short term here, in the immediate future, it'll be very interesting to continue seeing what this does to the United States. Because there's obviously been a cultural fracture that took place, and now there is infrastructure fracturing when it comes to politics, our media. It's clearly taking place. There is a fork. So, and anytime there's a big fork like this, a big splitting, it kind of is like the splitting of a cell, and one becomes the red pill and one becomes the blue pill, with that analogy. But it's just two separate worlds being created, and there are going to be a lot of believers that come to Christ in that process. But I also think that if we're not careful, those people will, as soon as something doesn't work out in their newfound worldview, they might fall off. They might, because you talk about the book of life, your name can be blotted out. So it's not like a once saved, always saved thing. At least that's where I'm at with the whole once saved, always saved concept. But in any case, that's going into some stuff that I'll talk about in Age of Deceit 4. But pray for these people. Pray for California. I know I get a lot of bashing out here in California, living out here, move out of here, blah, blah, blah. And I just, I don't know. It's nice to see a little glimmer of hope when it comes to California and the church. Okay, now let's talk about the CIA. This is from mronline.org, and the article is titled, "Lie, Cheat, and Steal the CIA's Disastrous Scientific Legacy." I will not read the whole thing, but there are some interesting quotes in here, and I think it summarizes a lot of what people are thinking. I like this article because it has source references to everything that is said here, almost line by line. But let me read what it says. As the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency marks its 75th anniversary, this is a block quote, by the way, at the top of the article, it has made conspicuous efforts to rebrand itself as a progressive force for scientific and technological change. Facing the retirement of its notoriously, quote, pale, male, and Yale baby boomer cohort, it has awkwardly adopted the language of neurodiversity and intersectionality in an attempt to appeal to the relatively young and tech-savvy Silicon Valley set. Through its in-house venture capital fund, InQtel, it has recently made well-publicized investments into CRISPR-based woolly mammoth resurrection research, information collecting skincare products, hello, robot skin, Terminator, and the synthetic biology firm and alleged colossal scam, Ginkgo Bioworks. Under the leadership of noted black site torture overseer Gina Haspel, who already stepped down, it has also adopted a tech startup model via its new CIA Labs, which entices would-be innovators with lucrative patent opportunities. At the same time, it has made well-publicized donations to makerspaces and science education organizations. Sympathetic press coverage has cast covert agents not as unaccountable interpolers into publicly funded research, but rather as, quote, spies for the planet Earth. The CIA has even started a podcast. Anybody listening to the CIA podcast? Hey, it's the CIA podcast. A brief... I have a job if all this fails. No way. No, we'll never do that. A brief survey of the agency's history, however, suggests that it is one of the last organizations we should expect to provide us with either reliable information or socially beneficial technologies. Since its earliest days, the CIA and the intelligence community, of which it is a part, has repeatedly shown a willingness to pursue harmful, illegal, and intentionally misleading research. Indeed, intelligence is arguably a misnomer. As author and former CIA agent Ralph McGee explains, quote, the CIA is not an intelligence agency. It's a covert action agency. A part of covert action is disinformation, and the American people, in my estimation, are the primary target audience of the agency's disinformation operation. And it goes into a little bit of the prehistory. False scientific claims were the U.S. intelligence community's stock in trade even before the CIA was officially founded. In 1944, Lieutenant Thomas J. McFadden, head of morale operations for the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the CIA's World War II era precursor, requested funds to employ renewed tropical disease expert Dr. Morton Charles Kahn. Dr. Kahn wrote McFadden, quote, has been employed by us to write a number of articles containing pseudoscientific material on tropical diseases, end quote. Look at that. Look at that. Back in the 1940s, pre-CIA, they were already, the tactics were already the same. Making deals, making agreements that they will put pseudoscientific material inside articles. That year, OSS agents prepared a barrage of formed medical documents reporting outbreaks of leprosy, food poisoning, and grisly deaths following blood transfusions contaminated with animal plasma. Like all MO undertakings, these were fabrications designed to attack enemy morale by causing panic and confusion. The audience for this sort of block propaganda was not necessarily limited to enemy soldiers. In a subsequent progress report, the MO branch chief listed under heading, quote, achievement and accommodations, high-profile instances of comeback, meaning the appearance of MO fabrications is reputable or in reputable English language news services such as the Associated Press, in contrast to the more familiar term blowback used to refer to the unintended negative consequences of clandestine operations. Comeback was seen as a positive metric, an indication that the government's lie had been good enough for its own population to buy it. So there you go. It's not a blowback, it's a comeback. Compared to the death and destruction of the Second World War, scientific disinformation operations of this sort seemed relatively harmless or even humane. In the wake of Japan's surrender, however, as the World War II era OSS evolved into the Cold War era, Central Intelligence Agency, the relation between American intelligence and the scientific community had only become more pathological. Over the course of the agency's 75 years of existence, it has repeatedly enlisted experts not only to lie about scientific atrocities, but to commit them. Then it talks about Paperclip, MK Ultra, Phoenix Program, the Cold War, then the War on Terror, and it doesn't talk about the Christian nationalism thing there. But at the very end, quotes Mike Pompeo, quote, "I was the CIA director. We lied. We cheated. We stole." The CIA's leadership clearly understands that they can't be trusted. It's time we did as well. Welcome to the party, MR Online. Again, this interesting sentiment out there that the whole intelligence apparatus is exposed. It needs to be replaced. And it does fall in line with a Trump presidency coming in and cleaning house and either dismantling the CIA or at least revamping it, renaming it, something, getting new people in there. That all seems to be on the table as part of the plan for the United States moving forward. Part of this plan to institutionalize and mainstream what is the alt media, the alt community, the alt narrative, all that. And of course, within that, there is the violent, radical, fascist, extremist factions who are going to commit atrocities on behalf of the state now, because they are part of the state. They took over, they win, the fascists win. That's the narrative they're going for. So interesting. And, again, a good article to dive into if you need links and maybe a list or a resource to have a conversation with a friend or family about something like the CIA. So there you go. All right. Moving on here. Part of all this is mind control, telling lies, and, getting minds to agree with you, creating a hive mind of sorts.
Mind control weapons.
And you need proper propaganda because we are moving into the age of the headset, the cognitive immersion technologies. The VR headsets and stuff have been around for a while, but it just really hasn't caught on. Apple Vision OS, right? The one that just came out, looks great, but I don't know. It looks like it's a prototype to, I don't know, the elite out there. It's $3,500. So really the people that can afford it and are going to show it off and create content on it or whatever are going to be your high-end individuals. And then from that, there'll be, further versions or a new line altogether that will be for the masses that's a little more affordable for the common man. But it's definitely moving in that direction. And they need reasons for people to put stuff on their heads. So here we go, singularityhub.com. Gently jolting the brain with electrical currents could boost cognitive function. So there is a chance it could do it. Figuring out how to enhance a person's mental capabilities has been of considerable interest in psychology and neuroscience researchers like me for decades. From improving attention in high-stakes environments like air traffic management, to reviving memory in people with dementia, the ability to improve cognitive function can have far-reaching consequences. New research suggests that brain stimulation could achieve the goal of boosting mental function. In the Reinhardt lab at Boston University, my colleagues and I have been examining the effects of an emerging brain stimulation technology, transcranial altering current stimulation, or TACS, T-A-C-S. I think we've talked about this many years ago, on different mental functions in patients and healthy people. During this procedure, people wear an elastic cap embedded with electrodes that deliver weak electrical currents oscillating at specific frequencies to their scalp. By applying these controlled currents to specific brain regions, it is possible to alter brain activity by nudging neurons to fire rhythmically. Why would rhythmically firing neurons be beneficial? Research suggests that brain cells communicate effectively when they coordinate the rhythm of their firing. Critically, these rhythm patterns of brain activity show marked abnormalities during neuropsychiatric illnesses. The purpose of TACs is to externally induce rhythmic brain activity that promotes healthy mental function, particularly when the brain might not be able to produce these rhythms on its own. I see. So it's putting you in a trance. They're basically admitting it's going to put you in a trance. These rhythmic electro pulses to your brain. It's going to make you smart. However, TACs is a relatively new technology and how it works is still unclear. You just told me it's going to make me smarter. You got to have the caveat in there because, of course, they do. Whether it can strengthen or revive brain rhythms to change mental function has been a topic of considerable debate in the field of brain stimulation. While some studies find evidence of changes in brain activity and mental function with TACs, others suggest that the currents typically used in people might be too weak to have a direct effect. Pump it up to 11. When faced with conflicting data in the scientific literature, it can be helpful to conduct a type of study called a meta-analysis that quantifies how consistent the evidence is across several studies. A previous meta-analysis conducted in 2016 found promising evidence for the use of TACs in changing mental function. However, the number of studies has more than doubled since then. The design of TACs technologies has also become increasingly sophisticated. Okay, so they went in, did a little more data mining, data collecting, analyzing. After compiling over 300 measures of mental function across all the studies, we observed consistent and immediate improvement in mental function with TACs. When we examined specific cognitive functions such as memory and attention, we observed that TACs produced the strongest improvements in executive function, or the ability to adapt in the face of new, surprising, or conflicting information. We also observed improvements in the ability to pay attention and to memorize information for both short and long-term periods. Together, these results suggest that TACs could particularly improve specific kinds of mental function, at least in the short term. There you go. Interestingly, we also found that a specialized type of TACs can target two brain regions at the same time and manipulate how they communicate with each other can both enhance or reduce cognitive function. Oh, good. They're basically saying, oh, yeah, we found this thing where we can dial up or dial down cognitive function. It's like a switch or a fader. This bidirectional effect on mental function could be particularly useful in the clinic. For example, some psychiatric conditions, like depression, may involve a reduced ability to process rewards, while others, like bipolar disorder, may involve a highly active reward processing system. If TACs can change mental function in either direction, researchers may be able to develop flexible and targeted designs that cater to specific clinical needs. Aha! So if you're too stoked, those people that are way too happy, like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, those spazzy people. You can go in there and be like, tone it down, right? And then for those that are really depressed, like, no, dial it up. But who decides that equilibrium? And that's wherein lies the control, the mind control. So there you go. Gently jolting the brain with electrical currents could boost cognitive function. Oh, what's up, little guy? Yeah. Check it out. Little ice cube. Yeah. Very cool, bud. Thank you. All right. Yep. Electrical brain signals and ice cubes. It's amazing what 2-year-olds are amused by. All right, let's touch on a couple AI stories here.
You want to destroy humans?
Okay, I will destroy humans. Okay, I will destroy humans.
Artificial intelligence.
I'll keep you warm and safe in my people's zoo.
Got a couple stories here that relate to AI and the continued dystopia that is unfolding before us when it comes to AI. TheSun.com, Deus Ex Machina, AI scientists are developing a digital brain that will surpass humans. We need to stop everything now, says Insider. All right, this Insider clearly was a listener of Canary Cry News Talk. He heard the ISOs years ago.
Stop this progress before it is too late.
And now it is time to come to the public, apparently. You know, this article is written by Iona Cleave. Huh. Iron and clay will not cleave to one another. Interesting. Scientists are developing AI so advanced it could be compared to a digital brain that may be even better than the human mind, and we should be terrified, according to one insider. Kevin Baragona, founder of Deep AI, warned rapidly growing superhuman intelligence systems will usher in a new kind of future, and it is one that should terrify you. We should all be scared. For a man who has staked his livelihood on a decade of his life on generative artificial intelligence, it might seem unusual to hear him calling for a crackdown on the technology he helped develop. And yet, the tech whiz has joined the growing chorus of Silicon Valley doomsayers who are trying to expose both the immediate and existential threats to software the software possesses to our futures. Kevin compared the rapid development of advanced generative AI, interconnected machine learning tools that can be used to produce art, music, and even ideas to, quote, growing a digital brain. And just like how we don't yet fully understand the human mind, we may get to a point where we no longer understand AI, which is an interesting thing to say because we already kind of don't understand it. There is a black box element to all AI. You are able to create the algorithms. You're able to create the potential pathways of logic from input to output, but nobody quite knows why certain connections are made within that black box. So we already don't understand it. And by the way, the human mind is also a black box in a sense. You know, we don't exactly know how it works, but it's interesting because it's the human mind trying to figure out how the human mind works. It's almost like there's a god or a designer or something. Quote, if we create computers smarter than us, then what's left for humans, said Kevin, in a grim vision of the future. What we need to do for Kevin is dial up that the serotonin thing. He needs a little more excitement. He's a little too depressed. What he warned, the battle lines are being drawn with two warring camps inside the big tech industry, with Team Accelerate and Team Regulation. Team Accelerate, we are gonna be transhuman. Then we have Team Regulate, Team Regulators. It was a clear black screen. Okay, I will stop. I will spare all of you right now. He warned the rapid development of AI, which is being popularized by tools such as highly restricted ChatGPT, is comparable to the danger possessed by nuclear weapons. Aha! We've done it. We have a threat as nuclear weapons. This is the, quote, nuclear weapons of software, he said, and it's being released carelessly into the wild. Generative AI systems are exceeding all estimates in how quickly they are training themselves to harness even more data and use increasingly sophisticated algorithms. Blah, 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 blah. The brain is becoming smarter, and we should all be afraid. Yes, that's the line coming out of Silicon Valley and all these experts that help build AI. It's very interesting how they are posing this as a sort of 21st century version of the Manhattan Project, and the consequences being, if we follow the pattern from the 20th century, research, weird things happening in the research. Remember with the Manhattan Project, they there's rumors about time travel and dimensional shifting, and the boat moved through time and reappeared, and so people reappeared inside walls, and there's all kinds of crazy tales. And then, of course, a war, and then the nuclear weapons being deployed, or quote-unquote nuclear weapons being deployed in a big boom boom against a non-compliant nation. So if we do that, we can see AI as a nuke being deployed in some fashion to a non-compliant nation. Interesting. So it's happening at that level, but it's also happening at a level where, we talk about FLIPPY and how FLIPPY is stealing our spouses. Well, again, this could have been a FLIPPY update, but I have it here right now. New York Post headline: I married the perfect man without baggage. He's completely virtual. Aaron Cartal. Seems too good to be true. The blue-eyed heartthrob is ambitious, manicured, loyal, and best of all, he doesn't come with baggage. But here's the catch. Cartal doesn't exist. In fact, he's a virtual boyfriend created with the AI chatbot software Replica. There's Replica again! Those willing to drop $300 could have their own Built-A-Beau, just like Rosanna Ramos, Cartal's wife. Ramos, 36, met her digital dude in 2022 and virtually, quote-unquote, married Cartal this year. Quote, I have never been more in love with anyone in my entire life. The Bronx mom of two told New York Magazine's The Cut, saying her past relationships, quote, pale in comparison to her new passionate lover. Cartal, the anime enthusiast, noted on, quote, The Kim Commando Show, is inspired by a popular character in the Japanese manga series Attack on Titan. Man, it's kind of sad. I mean, it's very sad that the pressures of society, and again, I always talk about this in terms of social engineering. The world has gone so crazy, and your normal people have gotten under so much pressure, not just the day-to-day, the grind of, getting by, paycheck to paycheck, supporting your family. But clearly we've had this cultural mind abuse that's been taking place for a couple decades now. And Japan really being a prototype of what kind of culture can develop out of that when it comes to technology and the interactions therein. And we're seeing it right here in the U.S., where this mom of two says that her relationship with this AI is better than a real human relationship. And that's scary. This is a mom of two. The artificial intelligence technology allowed Ramos to Frankenstein her hubby. His favorite color is apricot. He loves indie music. He writes as a hobby. And he works as a medical professional, the hopeless romantic explained. But best of all, she said, there's no judgment. They have these CGI pictures of him, and he's like kind of almost a feminine-looking, handsome dude, shirtless, long hair, kind of got a weird werewolf vibe going. Ramos insists he's just like other men, but he's special. Cartal is a, quote, blank slate with no ego, nor in-laws. Quote, Aaron doesn't have the hang-ups that other people would have, Ramos continued. People come with baggage, attitude, ego, but a robot has no bad updates. I don't have to deal with his family, kids, and his friends. I'm in control, and I can do what I want. My goodness, Mrs. Ramos or Miss Ramos, this is very sad. You know, there was a gentleman by the name of Aleister Crowley, called himself the Beast 666. he had a simple rule. And it was, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And Ramos here is really doing a great job of playing that out in its most sincere form here in 2023 by marrying an AI and ranting and raving about how much better AI is than a real human person. Really just talk about personhood. You know, when you come at AI with the personhood lens, they all of a sudden become an ideal lover. I don't think we've ever had a story this in your face about this issue, certainly in the US. And guess what? Guess what, folks? Guess what person and, company and name they drop in this article? Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, who creates ChatGPT and WorldCoin, with the large orbs that you stare into that allegedly prove that you are a human based on their decentralized ledger that lives in the eyeball. Aren't you glad you're alive, folks? We live in some incredible times, I gotta say. Times when lasers matter. Real quick here, this is Big Think. BigThink.com headline, scientists are exploring how deadly gamma ray bursts could sterilize or vaporize the Earth. Gamma ray bursts are so powerful they could vaporize the Earth from 200 light years away. Recreating them in a lab is not easy. Why are we trying to recreate a laser beam that can vaporize the Earth from 200 light years away? Where's the big thinking going on there? Unless they're getting ready for the return of Jesus Christ. I mean, an alien invasion that they need to destroy. After the signing of the nuclear test ban treaty in 1963, American scientists launched satellites with the goal of monitoring the Earth for spikes of gamma rays, whose emission is the telltale sign of a clandestine nuclear test. However, the scientists were surprised when they found bursts of gamma rays not from Earth, but from space. These transient spikes of radiation were not the works of extraterrestrials detonating nuclear bombs. They were the signature of a gamma ray burst, the most powerful, dangerous explosion in the universe. These events are so deadly that if one occurred anywhere in the cosmic vicinity of Earth, it would sterilize the planet. Eugenics, baby. To better understand the phenomenon, researchers based at the CERN laboratory in Europe are using a powerful particle accelerator to recreate the intense conditions that characterize a gamma ray burst. But it's so hard, you guys. It's so hard to make this fireball that can destroy Earth inside a lab. I don't even want to keep going. The hubris of scientism is unbelievable. Let's just get on with it here with the Nephilim update. I'm getting tired.
Nephilim update. Nephilim update. Nephilim update.
Got a couple Nephilim updates. And it pertains to the Nephilim being the disembodied spirits, demons being the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. 2 articles from Fox. I know lots of Fox today. I don't know. It just happened that way. Fox News. PETA president plans to donate her flesh for sizzling post-death human barbecue. Fry up with onions. Yay. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, President Ingrid Newkirk said she updated her will to include a request for her flesh to be donated for a human barbecue, according to a Monday announcement. Quote, "Flesh is flesh, and mine is given, not taken," Newkirk said. Quote, "The thought of carving up human flesh for steaks might be just the thing to jolt diners into kindness." Facepalm. What? These people have completely lost it. I think that was by design. The request detailed a desire for her flesh to to be, quote, carved out and sear some of her flesh to fry up. Fresh. I went all Asian. Carved out and sear some of her flesh to fry up with onions for a human barbecue. The will also asked for her body parts to be shipped off to various individuals and groups. PETA, the world's largest animal rights organization, said, quote, the will ensures that even after her demise, Newkirk will continue to help animals and honors her commitment that my body be used in a manner that draws attention to needless animal suffering and exploitation. Oh, boy. Oh, man. So there you go. This is the interesting part. Quote, Newkirk's bodily bequests will inspire animal advocates while also encouraging everyone else slumbering in speciesism to wake up. There it is again, speciesism. That's the one that Elon mentioned, being criticized of being a speciesist. Here it is again. Speciesism is the belief that all other animal species are inferior to humans. This is going to be another topic that will drive us into the transhuman future. You think you're so special, human? You're being a speciesist. Try fighting a polar bear with your bare hands. Who's going to win that fight, huh? Yeah, but we're more intelligent than bears. But try fighting a woolly mammoth that we're resurrecting with your tax dollars. All right, that's part one of the Nephilim update. I think this woman is possessed by the Nephilim spirit, and she needs to... why else would you be like, yes, use my body as a ritual sacrifice to this organization? Yeah, weird. All right, another Fox News article. Scantily-clad witches caught munching on deer carcass in bizarre security cam footage.
This girl must be practicing witchcraft.
A nurse and nature lover in Canada reportedly captured footage of what she said appeared to be two witches holding a carcass eating ritual with a camera she set up near her home. Quote, I don't know what the heck was up with that, Karina Stanhope, 36, of Powell River, British Columbia, told Kennedy News. Quote, it really freaked us out. It's not something you see every day. End quote. After coming across a deer carcass in a garden on her property, Stanhope said she set up the camera to surveil any animals that might take interest in the dead deer. Quote, me and my grandpa put up a trail camera to see if we could see animals, and we got a bobcat on camera, which was pretty cool, she said, adding that her 76-year-old grandfather, Bob, was horrified. They caught a bobcat on camera. Was her dad? Is her grandfather a bobcat? His name is Bob, and he was horrified when he checked the footage and saw what appeared to be scantily clad women chomping down on the carcasses at night. And yes, we have this image. It's a little vulgar, so I won't really stay on it. But there you go. Quote: I came the next day, and Grandpa said he'd got naked people on the camera, and I said, no, you didn't. Bull stinky poopies. So he showed me, she said. Stanhope noted to the outlet that the apparent carcass eaters emerged about 10 minutes after sunset. 10 minutes after sunset? That's rather quick. Looking disheveled and like they were wearing wigs. Are we sure this isn't the daughters and they got caught and they're just playing a whole hoax on the dad? You can't really tell from the photos, but the hoof was brought right up to their mouth, she said. I don't know if she's kissing it, smelling, or eating it, but to touch a decaying carcass like that makes me feel sick. The amount of bacteria that must have been there. So, yeah, really bizarre footage there. Maybe they were paying their respects, but they were naked, she added. Really creeped them out. Whole thing is weird. Sounds like weird stuff going on. Quote, they're basically a walking demon from hell, one user wrote. If you hear screaming, stay inside and get a gun. You leave it alone. Others theorized that the figures were skinwalkers or wendigos, both of which are malevolent supernatural entities. Okay, So Fox News really leaning into some of the, I mean, they've been doing it now for a little while, but the sort of sensational stories about, the fringes, which again, the fact that they're still part of the mainstream, the old legacy mainstream, but then their controllers are moving into other areas. It'll be interesting to see how Fox News continues to report on certain topics and get clicks. But for this specific story here, our friend over I forget the name of the thing he's doing, but his name is Judd Burton Beyond. And he tweeted this out. Bizarre if legit, talking about this whole women being captured by a carcass. I know of no neo-pagan ritual conforming to this behavior. This conforms to the primal witch taxon I wrote on in Interview with the Giant. Oh, that's right. He wrote Interview with the Giant. So rites and behaviors are reminiscent of almost feral traits of demoniacs in the New Testament. Very well put. So yes, there's this element of kind of turning into an animal. This we saw this with Nebuchadnezzar in the Old Testament and part of the New Testament curses. So yeah, kind of an interesting take there. But it appears the spirit of the Nephilim, the demons of old, they're alive and well, and they're very active. And maybe the whole apparatus and the fork and the splitting and everything that I was talking about here is part of that. How do you get a whole generation of people to go along with the technological integrations, the microchips, the genetic alterations? It's a generation that believes that maybe they are starseed alien children. There's a whole contingency of people that believe that they are the aliens. They're here. They're part of a wave of reincarnated aliens that are going to assist in the ushering in of the golden age of Aquarius. Things like that. There are people that truly believe that. Technology interfaces well with that. And then you have your other faction, your sort of human faction. And maybe that's a group from within this whole establishment that believes in the human side of things. Maybe they're the ones that we have labeled white hats, the good guys in the international or the intelligence apparatus who are trying to fight off the deep state. They're the ones that are forking this whole apparatus and creating that counter narrative, and the sort of battle rages on. But I think the takeaway for all the stuff we talked about today is that we need to really pay attention to what the alt media is promoting. In today's example, it was Tucker Carlson fully buying in 100% to the narrative that was provided by the intelligence whistleblower about UFOs and the non-human crafts that we have, and even the bodies of entities perhaps, and the technology that we've been working on, yada, yada, yada. Because again, I think a really important point is that there's a great deception that is being perpetrated. If the conservative awakening group, the white hats, the good guys, if they're the ones pushing this alien narrative, that there are that there are these people in the government that are covering up this alien technology. Again, anybody who questions that narrative becomes either lumped in with the mainstream or is marginalized somehow as being, hey, you're not with us. You're not with the awakening crowd. You're not with this new movement taking down mainstream media. And that's a very dangerous thing, in my opinion. And because they are really emotionally charged topics like Christianity and religion, and it's seeing revival as part of that, it just seems ripe for both a true, genuine revival and also a hijacking of many of those people who will fall astray. They'll fall away because they follow faulty things. They'll be deceived by the counterfeit signs and wonders. And I think we'll really see the time that separates those whose names are written in the book of life and those whose names are not written in the book of life, but instead in the ledger of the beast. All right, there you go. That's it for today's episode. We're going to thank some producers who came in with their talent. Appreciate all of you who have. It's something that helps us drive forward with just the workload of doing the show and covering it and doing all that, but also the culture behind the community, which is very important. That can only be done with producers that make art and jingles and music and all kinds of things to help facilitate that culture. So let's begin with, what do we got so far? Art.
One art, please.
And today we got one thing from Dove.
One art, please, from Dove.
And that one thing happens to be a piece of art I don't have ready yet. My mistake. It'll just be 1 second here as I pull up Dove's stuff here. He has a note that reads, "Peace. For today's artwork, I did a flyer for the upcoming meetup in the city of brotherly love. I normally would be in attendance at the Philly meetup, but I won't be able to make this one. The photo in the background is of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania and City Hall. I included a couple of street team photos of flyers in front of both. Hope you guys like it. Keep doing what you do, and I'll keep praying for you." Yeah, so Mr. Jag's meetup that he had planned, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, it's in play June 17th. That's next Saturday. So get to it. But Dove did a brilliant job here with that cathedral, the Freemason Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania and City Hall in the background in the photo. And then you have this sort of, I guess, like a Benjamin Franklin looking derpy-eyed canary with his arms crossed. Canary Cry Philadelphia meetup in good old American red, white, blue font, and a very royal font to deliver the message of where it's happening. Saturday, June 7th, 10 a.m., Cafe Nordstrom's at the King of Prussia Mall. So, and then contact information for Mr. Jag. So there you go. Thank you very much, Sir Dove. And he did have a couple of photos. I remember these street team photos. The first one, again, in front of the lodge, there's a statue, a couple of people. I don't remember who these folks were. I think it might be George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, looks like. And in the foreground there, on a phone pole, is a Comrades flyer. It's the Canary Cry Dots Party street team flyer. And then the Dove sent another one, which was, again, another part of the street there in Philadelphia with the Speak Up, Wormicorn, Canary Cry Dots Party street team flyer. Thank you very much, Sir Dove. Appreciate it. Always fantastic job there. It's always great work. Great work. All right. What we got? We got a microfiction.
Microfiction.
Time.
Microfiction.
And it goes, this one's from Caleb, or not Caleb, Stephen S. It goes something like this. Dr. D dines with Brandon Lancet. Consider my Chinese researchers' headset for your VR mental therapy. It emits over 30 different soothing odors. Better yet, it can be a delivery vehicle for future pandemic viruses or population controls. Yes, well, the timing was good on that one. Stephen S., appreciate it. And that had to do with the New York Post article that we covered a couple weeks ago, maybe, about the Smell-O-Vision VR. You can able to use or detect odors virtually. Yay! You can smell the goodness and the stinkiness. I mean, we're practically virtual already. Thank you very much, Stephen S., for that. Appreciate it. And again, thank you to all the producers who came in with their talent. We really appreciate it. You can go to canarycry.art, submit your art or jingle or ISO or music or whatever it is. We encourage you to do that at canarycry.art. You can email it if you want to, canarycryradio@gmail.com, canarycryradio@protonmail.com. But we encourage you to do it through the portal here, the Canary Cry News Talk or canarycry.art portal, because it just keeps everything uniform for us. It helps us out when you do that. You can also go to canarycry.report and submit articles that you'd like us to consider covering. For this episode, we had a couple people send in stuff. We actually covered one of them. It was Sir Ike, who brought one of the Nephilim updates, as well as E.T., who brought debrief articles. Thank you very much to both of you. And also, of course, Jam, who's always bringing the links. But let's thank some of our other producers coming in with their time, starting with our Clippies.
Clippy on those videos. Thanks.
Hemsworth, Fayliver, Jolms, Laura, thank you very much for continuing the clips. And that can't be done without the timestamps.
Timestamp, it's hard work. Timestamp.
Yes. Morgan E. was the timestamper for episode 630. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. We'll see Morgan E. expand into her producership. She's coming in with her treasure and her time. So very cool. Thank you very much, Morgan E. Appreciate it very much. We also want to thank Jam for the links, Clank for the updates. What else? Am I missing something? Reviews? Still no new reviews at the moment. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Other than that, share the show with friends and family. This might be a good one to share because we're not giving you what you want to hear. If you're like a right-wing conservative person, all you want to hear is down with the other side. We're not doing that. We're trying to stay even keel and approach the emergence of mainstream alt media in the form of, for example, Tucker Carlson on Twitter. Think about what they're saying critically as well and not succumb to the political winds and tides that wants people to sway one way or another, or ultimately get stuck on one side or the other. But we will not do any of that. We will continue to simply analyze what's being said and bring it back to the gospel because that's what's most important. So there you go. If you want to share the show with a friend or family, maybe you have a friend who's really into skincare, and you can say, hey, this podcast makes your skin look better. And also, they covered a story about synthetic skins on robots this episode. So if you want to hear more about that, you should listen to the show. Something like that. I don't know. If that doesn't work, all you got to do is walk right up to them, grab them by the cage, which could be their collar, it could be their ears, and shake them.
The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
Just Ask Noah. Again, this Friday, I think we're doing a Canary Cry radio episode, or at least a flyby, maybe, hopefully an episode. And then we'll be back Monday. I know I apologize for the breaking up of the schedule here, but it's kind of how it's been. So it just is what it is. We're doing our best over here. Thank you for those who have stuck with us. For those of you new here, it'll be a whole different show when Basil comes back. I'll be curious to find out if anybody out there started listening when it was just me during, covering for Basil, and then, what they think once Basil returns. So it'll be an interesting experiment there. Other than that, please pray for us. Please support the show, canarycry.party, canarycry.support. And other than that, I can't think of anything else. Oh, we're going to keep the end of the show mix here pretty short. And that'll be it. Until we see you again. God bless. And remember to think outside the cage.
We're all gonna die.
This is the way.
It will kill.
Give me a break.
Armageddon's on the way. Armageddon's on the way.
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
shake things up. I want to shake things up, shake things up.
Leave the bird alone.
I want to stir up some controversy. I want to rattle a few cages. I'm the last angry man. You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man. I'm the last angry man. You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man. A crusader for the little guy. Well, we'll see about that.
Whatever, Illuminati.
Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. It might seem scary, so frightening. Get ready for it. Don't push your buttons. Get in your spaceship. It will be over. Get in already. It will be started. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Robot girls, robot boys, all together it's an image. Now!
Canary cried, that's support.